Oh, there was actually something board game related I listened to.
Uh-huh.
It wasn't a podcast. It was this. Oh God, what's his name? Now off to but it was a guy who does monologues, and it was suggested by I was finishing up the History of Rome podcast.
Uh-huh.
And he recommended I went to it, and was legitimately one of the coolest things I've ever listened to in my life. But it starts out by talking about the board game Monopoly.
Uh-huh.
And his experience with that growing up, and then just weaves into this crazy tale of one thing after another, but he keeps circling back around in a way that shows you how all these weird, desperate events are connected in some way.
Huh.
It's the really, really good. Not safe for work in any way, but really good. Just
is it fiction or his own life or
no? It's things from his real life that he strings together and all his odd adventures. One of the main things was going on was he was talking about how he was really into Nikola Tesla.
Uh-huh.
And he wanted to do a monologue about Nikola Tesla. And he had ended up with some weird theater company with these weird people from Yale that were apparently doing a play that involved putting rabbits in harnesses dressed up as world leaders.
Uh-huh.
And they're like, your monologue would be the perfect ending to this. And he's like, okay, well, let's do it then. They're like, do you need anything? And I'm like, I do monologues. I need a microphone, maybe a desk. He's like, but I have an open slate. I want a Tesla coil. So they end up finding apparently what was the biggest Tesla coil on the Eastern Seaboard, which was handmade by this guy who had it in a flat. Just most of his apartment was taken up by this big ass Tesla coil. And they go in and they're like, does it work? He's like, yeah. They're like,
you need one. I needed it.
I need it. And he's like, is it safe? And the guy's like, what's safe?
Can it kill you? Yes, but so can a fork and a spoon. Sure, yeah, anything can kill you.
Yeah. But yeah, no, it's just this insane stuff that ends up connected all together, but he keeps stringing it. It eventually goes through the vector of his life, Nikola Tesla, and the board game Monopoly.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it was crazy good. It was $2 on audible.com. So yeah, it was pretty sweet. Made for some entertaining listening when I was driving around.
Nice. All right. Well, welcome everybody to the live recording of The Good, the Bored, and the Ugly. This is going to be an episode that maybe we'll get a little bit of clickbait going on here with our title, Games You Can't Play at Game Night, the Not Safe for Game Night edition.
Yeah.
I don't think that's the direction that we're going to take this, though.
I could.
No.
We've had a group that occasionally starts moving into that territory at our game night a time or two.
Yeah. Well, yeah, but those, I will tell you straight up, man, I will put the kibosh on any game that makes people feel uncomfortable. So that's why there's not going to be any more 18xx games, Andy.
I'm offended by trains.
No, man. Seriously.
Them and their
this isn't some sort of commentary on the Kavanaugh thing, is it? Well, you mentioned trains.
If you can make that connection, go for it.
Trent, I think I smell a boof in the air, dude. Jesus. Yeah. All right. Well,
welcome to GBU, where we look at modern politics through the lens of board games.
No, that is not what's going to happen. I will not do that. I did not sign up for this. We don't go there. We like to have fun and enjoy each other's company, and not just push everybody to one side of the end zones.
Yeah.
Oh boy.
Oh, well, we'll just do this. A vehicle will look at religion through the lens of board gaming.
Oh boy, I think that's even worse. Yeah, there we go. So let's, and we're going to be the first podcast ever to get filed under the politics and religion side of BGG and no longer available on real BGG. You know,
Yeah.
like the place that forums go to die. That graveyard will be
Oh, is
there.
it like the Ivory Dice Towers probably over there?
Yeah, there you go. And there's my dad is joining us. So welcome, Dad. Welcome, Mom. Hey, it's good to see you. We are about to get started here. So our not safe for game night edition. Okay. So, did I think I misspelled the title in our recording here. I think I put a question mark in instead of like the parentheses or something. No, it's just how it shows up in Google Hangouts. Okay, all right. Just it looks fine on YouTube. Okay, so I've got everything ready to go. Are you guys cool with getting started here?
Yes. I don't even remember what I'm reviewing and hyping. I should probably bring that
up. It rhymes with boot or toot.
No.
And I think it'll be a
down again. Okay, that goes for it. Let's do it.
Shoot, let's get started. 3, 2, 1. Hello and welcome to The Good, the Bored, and the Ugly, a podcast about board games. I'm Joe Sallin, the host of The Good, the Bored, and the Ugly. I'm joined tonight by Andrew Dennison. Andy, how you doing?
Not too bad.
And Trent Ham. Trent, how about you?
I'm pretty good.
We're not joined by TC tonight. He is hopefully currently enjoying a concert by Kate. So Kate, if you are a Good Board Ugly follower, you maybe have heard Kate on our podcast in the past. His daughter Kate, who is a high school girl at a concert right now. I think that's right. It's like an orchestra concert. So anyway, hope that is all going well.
Though, like when they hold your children hostage at those.
Andy, I think that this is orchestra we're talking about. This is not a sporting event. So you're
No. Like they literally did this when Anna was like playing orchestra. Like they you were not allowed to bring them just when it was their turn. So like in the middle, like extravaganza Christmas where everyone's playing together, like the orchestra would always be like right after the vocals. And then they would make them all sit in the auditorium throughout all of the band. So you like just couldn't take your kid when it was their part and leave.
Mm-hmm.
So they held you hostage for hours.
Yeah. Well, I hope
I'm going to kill the tree in the front yard.
I hope there's no hostage situation going on right now with TC and Kate. I don't think that's what's going on. I have a feeling that this is something that Andy cooks up, and maybe this is a dream Andy's had. I'm not sure.
No, they do it at Ames, dude.
Okay.
I don't have to put up with that crap at Gilbert. I just pick her up and we go.
Oh, that's nice. You don't have to. Okay. Well, I have no other way to respond to this except for to say, Trent, let's talk. Let's talk with you about something else. How are you doing? How's the travels?
I've been traveling quite a lot lately. I haven't been able to play many games. It's been very tiring. Let's leave it at that.
You were able to travel to the general, well, not really that close, I guess, to the place that you're about to be reviewing a game from. But you went to the eastern side, at least.
Yeah, I was in South Carolina. I drove there from Iowa and drove back.
Mm-hmm.
It was great.
Safely.
Yes, it was great. I drove.
On the plus side, you drove there and didn't fly back like through the hurricane.
Oh boy. Yeah, drove there and floated back.
I'm home, and that's about all I can say.
Yeah.
Well, it's nice to see you, Trent. It's nice to be able to hear your voice, I suppose, because it was definitely we were worried about you, hoping for you, and glad that it all turned out okay. So glad to have you back. Reminders to everybody that listens to this podcast: if you like the stuff that we do, support us by supporting GameSurplus.com. They are an excellent online merchant that's going to give you the best service at some of the most competitive prices that you'll see, free shipping at $120, and podcast picks that you can use a special code. Stay tuned for that later in the episode in one of the transitions, and you can use that code to get 10% off their already discounted prices. And you can thank the Good, the Bored, and the Ugly, and tell them that the Good, Bored, Ugly sent you when you do that. So GameSurplus.com. And let's get started now. Trent, who apparently caught the South Carolina crud, and you got to play a game that's about that side of the U.S.
Yes. This is literally the only game I've played since the last time I've been on the podcast that I had not previously reviewed. So it made my choice pretty easy. The game is Fort Sumter. I have played it 3 times today, so I feel like it's a good time to talk about it. Fort Sumter is a relatively short, I'd say about a 20-minute 2-player war game from GMT. Very, very nice GMT production. It was designed by Mark Herman. I believe it's the first in a series that he's doing for GMT that's like shorter games like this. If you played 13 Days, it's a lot like 13 Days. That's definitely a good comparison. If you haven't, this is a lot like a short Twilight Struggle, except set during the Civil War. It's like
Trent, I heard you say it's like, and then that's it. That's all that I heard. I think it might have cut out. I'm not sure. Andy, can you hear anything?
Nope.
hello?
There we
Hey,
are.
Trent, can hear you now. So you were saying it's like, and then it cut out.
I was saying it was like 13 Days. I'm not sure why I cut out.
I don't know either, but the last thing I heard was you said it was like 13 days, and then you said it's continued on for a little while, and then, but anyway, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's like a Twilight Struggle, much shorter version of Twilight Struggle. Anyway, so the board of the game is a map with 12 spaces on it. It's essentially an abstracted view of the way that the world was in the United States in like 1860. So the spaces, some of them represent locations, and some of them represent things like newspapers and things like that kind of represent the state of America at that time in an abstracted way. You're using cubes to demonstrate control over these things. So one player is the Union, one player is the Secessionists. Throughout the game, you're placing board through card play, very much like Twilight Struggle. You're using cards either for their ability or for their numerical value. And if you're using just for their numerical value, you're just placing a number of cubes equal to that number value. If it's an ability card that's of your color, blue or gray, you can also choose to do the card's ability if you want. This is played over 3 rounds. Each round you have 4 cards in your hand, and you also have an objective card that's face down off to the side. You play 3 of the cards, and then the 4th card is laid face down off to the side. Then you resolve the objective cards. In this game, that you don't score a whole lot of points. Mostly, you have to do quite a bit to even get a point. My scores of this that I played today, the highest point total I've seen is 8 as a final score. You don't score a whole lot of points in this. I lost to my son just a little bit ago with a tie score of 7, and he broke it with a tiebreaker. So every point you get is worthwhile. The objectives each round are worth a point each. And then there's other points you can get by dominating a quarter of the board. If you have to be controlling 3 light-colored spaces, then you get another point. And you keep going like this, back and forth, alternating card play for 3 rounds, 3 card plays each. And then you resolve all the cards you set off to the side by revealing them in order. And essentially what that does is it just changes the state of the board a little bit. You do a little bit of final scoring. The Fort Sumter space on the board is worth an additional victory point at the end of the game. And then that's basically it. You resolve ties. Whoever controls Fort Sumter is the first tie break. And then the last tie break, the Union player wins the tie break. And that's all there is to it. It plays in about 20 minutes. It's really straightforward. It's really fun. It's clearly a game that rewards a lot of replay. Because every time I played it, I thought I've screwed up some stuff. Like, I shouldn't have done this every time I played it. And that when you realize that during a game afterwards, like, I could have done this better, then that makes me want to play it again. And it's happened for the first 3 plays of this game. So I'm very happy with it. It's definitely a game that's going to stay in rotation for a while. It's a nice short, like 20-minute 2-player game. And I highly recommend it. It's Fort Sumter, Sumter.
Very cool. Well, I know that I've been interested in trying this one, but I've not gotten a chance yet. So, Andy, what do you have to say?
I played it once. I was the one who got 8.
I won. Yay.
Well, I'm going to take pride in that. I don't win a lot. So. But anyway, basically, though, I actually thought this one was probably easier to parse out than 13 Days was. because there's not a lot of spaces that do special effecty thingy mabobs. And so it was pretty easy to work through it. The thing I really enjoyed, actually, that put it different from Twilight Struggle and whatnot, was that in most of those games, you just have a set supply of cubes you're working with off to the side. In this game, all of your cubes are on a track, so you keep pulling from them, and then as you quote-unquote breach certain areas by pulling cubes off, that could have various effects on the game state. And so, for example, when you breach first, when you get like extra cubes in your pool you can use. When you breach a different one, you get a guy called the Peacemaker, and whoever breaches first, the other person gets to put that meeple on a space, and then nobody can add anything or take anything from that space till end game. There's if you get to what's called the Final Crisis area, if you breach that area first, you get more cubes to work with than your opponent does, but you also take -1 points. So just that kind of track to the side and thinking about, do I really want to play this card? Like, I could put this number of cubes out, but is that actually what I want to do? That kind of actually was a different sort of mechanisms from many of these games I played, and made things a little bit more interesting, just for something new. So I don't know. I really liked that aspect of it. I mean, all the other aspects of the game were very much similar to like 1960 or Twilight Struggle, but the track that you pulled cubes off of and that like affecting the game state, that was kind of the new thing for this one, and I really liked it.
Very cool. All right, well, that was the first look for Andy, it sounds like, because it was one game, and then Trent sounds like he's played a couple of games, and that sounds really interesting. That's Mark Herman's the Fort Sumter, which is like the very short, condensed version of the Civil War. And now let's hear from Andy with an update on his adventures in the Woodland realm.
Yeah, I'm playing Root a lot, and that's fun.
And I get to play again, which is good.
Yes. Anyway, so I'm not going to do a big review of it yet, but one of the things I think I've noticed about the play of this game, and I've heard some people who have played it a lot on other podcasts talk about, was I think in a lot of games like this, especially since Root is kind of this weird bridge game where you're going to get, a lot of Euro gamers potentially playing it for the first time, since it's like basically an introductory war game, Euro hybrid, like a coin game, basically. The thing I think to stress to these people that I found out is, in this game, you need to be aggressive. And that's the lesson I learned, because the last game was one of the best performances I've ever had. And it's because I was constantly at somebody's throat, choking the life out of them, trying to take areas. So I think the biggest thing I've discovered in Root is, yeah, you really do have to be somewhat aggressive in this game. This isn't, in some coin games, you can kind of a lot faster than you think it is.
Okay, Andy, I think you said in some coin games you can kind of, and that was the last thing I heard. I heard a large cutout. It might be that my connection. I apologize to listeners.
It cut out for me too. So.
Yeah.
Okay. I apologize for any issues on my end. I'm not sure, with connection issues, it's really difficult to know. And I'm sorry to take up even more of your time by explaining it, but could you say that again, Andy?
Yeah, sure. So I was going to say, in some coin games, you can kind of get away with turtling. But in Root, I don't think you've got the time or the luxury to do this, because I think if you're playing with people who know what they're doing, that game's going to be over a lot faster than you think it is.
Yeah, like I was really shocked at how quickly I thought in the past I've seen the Woodland Alliance go slow until boom, and then they're unstoppable. This game, it felt like they came out strong and never let up.
Yeah, and that's exactly pretty much what I tried to do with the Airy too, the hockey programmy dudes, was just like, I'm just going to be hyper aggressive this game. Like, I'm not going to slow down. If anything looks right for the taking, boom, I'm in there and I'm going to take it. And yeah, that, like I said, one thing, one way or the other, it would have been either me or the Woodland Alliance that would have won that game, because we were both like right at one round to win the game. But yeah, I think that's the thing I've learned about Root that I'm starting to appreciate is, yeah, you got to be aggressive in the game. You have to keep your win condition in your mind and just go for it. Like there's not a lot of room for just messing around, which could also maybe be a really dangerous thing for new players, because if you're playing a faction for the first time or playing it for the first time, if you just kind of go around pulling levers, seeing what will happen, like there's no way you can play competitively, I think, against someone who's played before and knows that you have to be aggressive, because I think aggressive is how you end up winning this game. And that's kind of been my realization through repeated play. But yeah, I'm really, really liking Root. Like I said, it's kind of it's a war game that is a space I'm finding interest in lately and exploring. But you can actually, due to the time frame and the fact it doesn't look like a textbook, you can sit down and play it at a game night, and people have a good time with it. So
well, cool,
anyway.
Man. I love this one. Have you gotten any more chances to play, Trent? I've heard recently that some pretty experienced players think that the Lizard Cult is underpowered.
I would agree with that. They're very difficult to play and really easy to disrupt. That's the thing I'd say about it. I think their best chance is when they have, honestly, when they play with the River Folk. I think they really need the River Folk to get going, and the problem with that is that means that the other players in the game can't really interact with the River Folk, because if you have 2 or 3 players interacting with the River Folk will just trample everybody. So yeah, I think that they're intended to be they're a weaker faction. I don't know whether it's intentional or not, but I do think they're weaker than the others, the Lizards.
Yeah. That's what I've heard from people is if you want to play the game on like hard mode, you pick the Lizard Cult.
I really like the 4 that just came in the base box. Like I just feel like I just want to sit there and keep trying those ones, and maybe just the difference in each game being the Vagabond changing, like I'm okay with that. But like for some reason, I just want to continue to play this game with those 4 until like until I really get the feeling I need something else. I'm still at this point where I'm like, I've got a lot of like thoughts that are swirling about which faction I think is supposed to work what way, and what faction is, like just how to approach each one. Cause I've now played the Cats twice, and just like my last game is the Cats, I definitely screwed up. And I think it was because I didn't like really choose places to keep to like concert my forces. And I think that was advantageous to you, Andy. And it also just kind of like, I didn't do anything. Like you have to you start with a dude peppered all over the board. But you really need to get them moved into like areas that you control. So, and just to me, like the way that I got smoked this last time, it was like even with the Vagabond trying to specifically help me, like I still sucked. Like I was just like getting pounded. So I'm still figuring it out. I'm having a blast doing it. So yeah,
I think the Cats, there's a trap there. If you're a Euro gamer and you're playing the Cats, I think there's a trap.
I played Roads and Boats this last game, and I lost hard. Like I played Roads and Boats, meaning I played a logistics game and not the the actual war game that's Root.
Right. Well, and that's kind of the trap. I think an easy trap to get into with the Cats is building too many sawmills and not enough recruiting places quickly. So, like, I think if you're a Euro gaming it, your natural instinct is to build up your infrastructure and then build your army. But if you're not building your army while you're building your infrastructure, you have to deal with a big ball of murder birds that's going to eat everybody.
Yeah, that's true. And not only that, but I also had the Woodland Alliance that was like taking what little sureness I had, like the one, because they have that revolution thing, and that was enacted in such a close place to it was right next to my keep. It was a keep adjacent spot. And so like I had this area that just was like a foothold for me, and it just went flipped green, and it was like 2016, man. I didn't see it coming.
Yeah, no, it's a good game. I'm really looking. Yeah, it's one I want to play more, and I don't know. It's going to be hard pressed to beat that out as my game of the year.
Yeah,
really.
I mean, there's So many things to play with there. I really like it. Let me, before we move on here, talk quickly about my experiences with the gaming group. So it's great to see Carter here in our live chat. You've always been supportive and watching and stuff. So, and now he's probably like AFK or something, so he doesn't know. But I just wanted to say it's cool to see you. And today I got the chance to teach Ticket to Ride during like a kind of training session that I have for kids. And then during the actual game night, I had a group of kids playing Ticket to Ride for the first time, and they seemed to have a real blast. One of the players was trying specifically to interact with everybody else, and it sounds like that was kind of weird, and it made the game feel very like there was an inconsistent element to it, but it still sounds like there was a lot of fun. Also, we got to try the first vision impaired specific game. This is a very tactual or tactile game, and the game itself it's a roll and move. Okay, it's a roll and move, but it does have variants that allow for there being some strategy, even though you are still always going to be potentially at the mercy of whatever the dice roll. But that just is kind of what that does. Like an aspect of like lose a turn or whatever just kind of makes the experience go on longer than what it would seem. And so it kind of like teases kids into like thinking the game's almost over, and then boom, actually there's 2 or 3 more rounds. But it feels familiar enough so that you don't like you still like feel like you can get back there. So and I think that, like that being the case, it was a very positive experience. The game was called Web Chase. It's not on BGG, but the game that we played is called Web Chase, and it involved tactile like insects that were being eaten up by the players, which were spiders. So I had a huge amount of assistance from gamers and also adults that are helping, and it was a very awesome time for about, I feel like it was about 18, 20 kids, somewhere around there, all playing video games and board games. Mainly, it was mainly different board games, and there was a game of Super Smash Bros. Going. So very successful, fun game night. Thanks to all who came and to everybody who helped out for making it such a great time. Now, my review is actually for a game I've been playing a lot of online. Like so much online that I feel like, holy crap, I'm at like just a different place with this game now. You ever get that feeling when you guys play something and like, you realize that maybe you've played the Twilight Struggle app like 270 times, and then you're playing somebody like me who's got like a game and a half under my belt in person, and like you're like, whoa, he just he's making all those you can see new players make all those mistakes, and you're like, like you just kind of like quickly not worry about them anymore in strategy. You know what I mean? Like it's just something we automatically do when we're at a table, and it's like, you're not a threat. I don't worry about you. It's like you look at who the threat is. Like what I do is I look at the game, I evaluate what is best for me, and if there's something there that just jumps out, I take it, right? And then I look at other players that are doing well in score, either the best or close to me, or I look and see like whether or not I'm competitive, and I'm like, okay, if everything is equal, what can I take from you? Like, what do you need? And I feel like it's just like that sort of level of just that next level of holy crap. And I've been doing that with Rajas of the Ganges, which is available on yukata.de. This is a dice worker placement game. The workers are separate workers. It is not dice as workers. It is a worker placement game that involves dice as resources. Imagine if this were Stone Age, only you roll the dice before you ever have to actually spend them. So there's no uncertainty beyond when you obtain the dice in the first place. I'm actually still playing the game at like its intro sort of game. And this is because it's one of those weird games where like it's a combo heavy game, combo-rific game. And there is more control in the advanced game, but they're also kind of like lower scores in general because you have to actually get rewards to put on your board before you can just activate them, because you start with them basically preloaded in the introductory or new game. And so I really like just the movement and how quick the game goes and how smooth it is. And so it's one of those weird times when I'm actually playing the intro game of something, right? And I like never do that. I'm always playing like, no, let's take this to the highest level possible. Like let's draft cards in Agricola. I ain't gonna like take the randomness or anything, but like this is one of those games where like I'm okay with playing the base game. And I've got tons of games that's going right now. I am really enjoying Rajas of the Ganges. It is, it's got a couple of modules you can play with. You can play around with many different things, and some of them are more than others. I am probably going to at some point check them out, but there is some really cool things under the hood here. It really does feel like there are elements of engine building just because you you kind of like upgrade your ability to do certain things, and then when you take an action, it becomes more and more effective. So I really do appreciate those elements and the build up, and I love the way that it ends. I just love the ending. It's like, so boom, okay, somebody won, cross the finish line, it's over. And I know it can be frustrating if you feel like you just finally got your stuff going and now you're ready to run it, and oh, you won, so I don't even get to see this play out. I understand that, but like, you know, also I'm one of those, like, if I can see that a game is not going to end in my favor, I don't want to waste my time taking turns anymore. Like, every time that I take a turn, especially when I click go to next game in Yukata, and then I come up with this game and I have to reanalyze the entire board state and remind myself of how hopeless of a hole I've dug for myself. And so it's like, I'd rather just not do that. If I know that I'm going to lose and it's a 2-player game, it usually allows you to just give up. And that's usually something that I'm like very open to if it seems like it's just not going to happen. So anyway, in Rise of the Ganges, the ending of the game keeps it so that I don't even have to ever consider that, because usually the game is racing towards an end quicker than I want it to if I'm losing. So it's very cool that way. And I would invite everybody to go to Yukata. That's YUCATA.de, and work yourself through the learning process of how the buttons and the thumbnails and the widgets work, because it is the most stable board gaming platform out there. It seems like it's always working. The games are all very well designed and set up so that if you're going to make a mistake, usually the game has things that are like, hold on. You're going to finish your turn without using this? Idiot. No, but it doesn't say idiot. It just kind of is assumed that, like, you know, you were going to. But this game will keep you from making those sorts of silly mistakes that, you know, that can, this is all over Yukata, that if there's a silly mistake, usually the programmers try to develop it in there that it'll remind you before you end your turn, because that can be really frustrating. And usually they're kind of old. They look like it doesn't exactly look like the most graphically advanced website, but it's so stable, and I really love it for that. It does have the original artwork, which is nice. But anyway, I really like Yukata. I'm enjoying Rise of the Ganges. Trent, actually, I think you were the first one to ever bring this to our game night. Do you ever play this game anymore?
No, actually, I traded away my copy.
Oh, you did?
Yes, I did.
Was that during a purge, or did you just find things you disliked?
It was one of those where I like looked at my collection and decided when was the windows where I was going to choose this over other games.
Do you still have like Lords of Waterdeep?
Nope.
You have Stone Age?
Nope.
All right. Well, I would say that like those would be two that I think that this goes higher than both of those, and it kind of is almost like a mixture of the two. So, but I totally understand, and I'm not trying to change your mind about this. It just is. I'm just picking to see like what it is. You know, those were holes, and I was wondering if you were having them filled by any other of the usual suspects. I guess, if that makes any sense.
Nope.
All right, man. You don't have them. All right, so that was my review of the Rajas of the Ganges, mostly the online implementation on yukata.de. And anyhow, let's now move into the topic, which is games that we can't play at game night. The games that you don't get a chance to play just because, you know, for whatever reason, they don't work out. And now this is not your not safe for game night type games. This is more just like the environment does not suit what it's like when you walk into the game night. Meaning like sure, I suppose that at a certain level, maybe it's just that was a judgmental way of me saying that I don't mean you're not safe for work games. Just because they use bad words doesn't mean they're safe for game night. There are other elements, there are other aspects to a game besides just whether or not all the content is appropriate that makes it appropriate and suitable for a game night. Now, what are those criteria? What makes a game suitable for game night is very much so up for debate. But since, Andy, you were the suggester, the originator of this topic, what specifically did you mean to refer to when you said games that don't work at game nights?
Well, what I was meaning by this not so much was what doesn't work, but what I don't go to play. So like, I think for most people,
yeah, that's a good distinction to make. Yeah, I don't mean to be like putting words in your mouth already.
Right. Yeah, I think for most people, I don't know. Like I remember Trent talking about getting in a debate about this with Twitter, whether it's rude or not to go to a game night with expectations. Mm-hmm. But I kind of do. Like and the reason is for what I'm doing at game night. Because for me, game night's two aspects. One part is definitely to be social with people I care about, and I know. But part of it is sort of like, with a lot of the mental health stresses my family goes under, it's kind of my self-care time. And weirdly enough, when it comes to self-care for me, I am best served self-care wise by doing an activity that requires so much concentration or difficult hard work on your brain that you have to kind of leave everything else out of the picture in order to do it well. So the two things I have found that really kind of do that for me are either archery, because it's kind of zen, got to focus, got to work on breathing, all those little nuances, or board gaming, particularly the board games I go to play a board game night, which would be kind of I would say medium level up is what I generally go to. Probably, even if you're going to talk like medium level, like medium Euros, you're going to have to be it's going to have to be pretty compelling for me to really like play that and really desire that outcome. Now, I'm not saying it has to be my way or the highway, but that's just not what I go to game night with the expectation of doing.
Okay, so what's an example of a game that you don't have the expectation of playing when you get to a game night?
Anything that falls into the gateway category, for sure. So like, unless
so
it's
this
one
is the games Andy can't play at game night.
Well, or why some people, because I don't think, I don't know, like I really don't think most people go to game night and they're just like, whatever. Like, I think a lot of people go with at least an idea of what they might like to do. And so what I'm really thinking of is, as an individual basis, what do people go with an expectation of? And what are they hoping to get out of their game night, and what and why? What games would you not want to play there, and why? So for me, where this kind of came up is in talks with you, Joe, like you didn't realize some of the games I do play because I typically play them out of game night.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
And so I thought it made for an interesting topic because I'm sure there's got to be other people out there with a similar bent. So for my situation, since I use game night as a social time and a self-care time, there's a certain category I want. However, if I'm at home playing with my kid or wife, I'm not like, here, my 9-year-old wonderful son, here's 18OE. Let's learn that together. You know what I mean? So I play a lot of games that I'm sure there are people that come to game night to play and like to play, but I just don't. Like my son, just this last fall when we were doing some campouts, finally got to where he wanted to play grown-up Ticket to Ride. We were playing my first Ticket to Ride, I think it was, before that.
Cool.
Now he plays adult Ticket to Ride, and we're really enjoying that. Gateway games, I do have gateway games in my collection. Like I still have K9 and all the expansions, and I'll play that with my son.
K2.
Oh, K2. Yeah. K2. So like it's not that I don't play gateway games, but those are things I don't come to game night to play, if that makes sense. So I was just wondering if other people have that in their category, or even related to that, what games are hard to play at game night in the sense of, different categories could be put in that one. What are games that are appropriate to play at an open game night where anyone could sit down? What games do you go to play? What games do you typically not play at game night because you get that fulfilled in another way? So there's a lot of different categories for that. And maybe we can look at those in a little more detail for each of us. Because I know we've had issues at our game night in the category of, are these games appropriate to play at game night?
That's interesting. Yeah. Well, I definitely I get what you're getting at there, Andy. It took me a second, and I think I might have set the topic up a little bit awkwardly. That, because when I think about like games that I can't get played at game night that need like other things, I think of like your kind of, I mean, I guess we've done a previous episode on event games, you know, like your Twilight Imperium 3, you know, it's almost like certain games, like so frequently will be like, it's like we want there to be a main dish somewhere in the night.
Right.
And I feel like that main dish is like that game that goes for 2 hours plus at, you know, at somewhere around there. Whether or not it should. And it's so difficult, like, because I feel like there's always like, let's play a game waiting on somebody to get here. And then somebody will play, you know, it's kind of tough because some games seem to like almost fall into this category you're talking about by necessity, just because they don't get played at game night because, you know, I can't muster the group. But I honestly think that more than anything, like the games that I don't get played at game night that I want to, 2-player games. I mean, like I just, you know, and not just 2-player games, but 2-player games that you would like, you know, get a partner and then just kind of, you know, each of you sort of is building, you know, like a deck construction game of some sort, you know, or like Lord of the Rings, the card game or something. And I think that maybe
or like Game of Thrones or something, like the LCG markets.
Yeah, I don't get this played at game night because it does tend to interfere with the, you know, the social, like you're saying, like you said, there's social needs and self-care needs. Well, here at the game night, there's like social aspects, and then there's like sort of pursuit of, you know, like competitive gaming mechanisms, whatever, you know, carrot that dangles in front of all of our faces, thematic integration, all these like things that are like next level people once they're in the hobby. And I think that really like the one area that is just so totally like lacking at game nights, at least, is things that require you to be sort of invested in an IP or invested in, you know, like a game system. And it's specifically 2-player versions of that. And you'll see, you know, like it's like if the community's there, so much of it's dependent on there just being this huge community. And so you have to count on a community. And on top of that, it's, you know, definitely strange when you're like, you know, trying to be also open to people who maybe haven't played anything or aren't even sure they want to play games, just are like sort of passing by, which is kind of a difficult line to toe. And I don't know precisely what the sweet spot is, but you know, that's enough words for me. How about you, Trent? What do you think?
I think, I mean, I largely agree with what you say but I'm kind of, I guess in the end, I'm kind of where Andy is, except that I think I'm a little more willing to just kind of play whatever's on the table. And that's just my personality. I'm like Andy, I get a lot of like, I would just say family style games at home. So when I go to game night, that's not really what I want to play because I've already played them a bunch and I have other gaming interests and I want to play them. I want to actually get them played, not just play more of the family things I could play at home. Generally, if I go to game night, if I go up to Ames and go to a game night, I don't want to play something I could just play at home with my family.
Yeah, I think that's how Andy approaches it from too. I think that's one thing you guys share in common.
Yeah, but I think what gets played at home with my family is maybe a little different than what it is with Andy. I think that I can get away with a little more heavier stuff at home.
Yeah, you can get into kind of the light to light medium category, right?
Yeah, I definitely can. Like I said, I sat down and taught my son Fort Sumter, boom, boom, boom. We were through a game of it in 30 minutes of full teaching, and he beat me on his first shot. Nice. I mean, that gives you an idea that, like, I mean, the capacity to play something with some depth is here. But
yeah, no, you're getting there, Trent. You're getting to the point where, like, but does that mean that you're going to eventually just be like, on Sunday nights, our family plays games now, and the game night just doesn't have an allure for us anymore.
It is actually possible. I mean, that we could reach that point. I think more it will remain something that I do for the social reasons.
Sure.
Because it's a social outlet. I mean, I work from home. I tend not to see a lot of people during the week. And so it's going to game night is a social outlet for me. I think because I recognize that, I'm more willing to play games that other people want to, because for me, I really see it as social. I mean, there are obviously games that I get to play at game night that are difficult to play at home, like 18xx games, and those pop up. I want to get in them because that's my opportunity. But for me, I think it's even more social than it is for Andy. It's interacting with other people.
Yeah, and I think for me, it's becoming more like that as like things kind of settle down a little bit in my life.
Mm-hmm.
And since I started playing online, like when I'm doing all the 18xx I do online and whatnot, that it's not as good as playing across the table from somebody, but it kind of
it is really not. I've tried, but it's not the same thing.
But it still kind of fulfills that just a little bit for me, to where like I don't like, no, we have to play an 18xx because I haven't played one in a month, and god dang it, I really want to.
But that way you get like that's an environment where you can be with people that are just as like, you know, willing to dig in rules and willing to learn new systems, and also that are experienced 18xxers that aren't going to, I mean, you're going to get more to the core of the game when you seek out that sort of an online experience. And I think that I'm kind of getting a good dish and a dollop of that from my online system. You know what I mean? Like that's where I really get my just like hammer it out, do the best you can mentally, and try to, you know, like really exercise the noggin. And then I am embracing the social aspect as well. For me though, I do still find there being an allure. For example, a game like Ticket to Ride that I play with for the first time with a group at school, I will enjoy that game, and that sometimes will like put that game, the idea of playing that game with people that are, you know, maybe I'll teach them the base game, and then it'll make me think like, oh, I really want to play this map of Ticket to Ride that's more advanced, you know, or whatever. And this is kind of maybe not the greatest example, but playing Ticket to Ride kind of makes me want to go play Hansa Teutonica, because I see it as like the heavy game version of Ticket to Ride. And so it's kind of like inspires just this idea, because I see the infectious, like I see the passion for the hobby taking hold when people realize, like when the kids can figure out that like, oh, like it's actually good for me to kind of bank up my cards a little bit before I start claiming routes. Otherwise I'm kind of left at a bit of a disadvantage to whatever other players that want to see me and block me. But if I've got everything good here, I can't be touched. Or you're like, hey, these are routes that are good to get me points, and this is too risky and stuff. You know, just like any of the learning that takes place during a game, to me, it is very infectious to observe it, because it makes me want to go learn more about the places where I'm at right now. Because I've been there where I was in the first game of Ticket to Ride, and I've seen, you know, like I've sort of sifted out through my mental processes some of what I thought to be strategies, and maybe decided throughout that process that there was elements to the game that I didn't like enough to keep pursuing them without certain limitations, aka, you know, people are new, so that's why I get out Ticket to Ride. If there's not new people, should I get out Ticket to Ride? And, you know, so I started asking myself those questions. So anyway, what it does is just seeing it infect others keeps me in, but at the same time, the social aspect is there with old friends, and there's something for that like I specifically like, it's a need for me too.
Right. And I think on my end, to some extent, it kind of becomes, if I'm playing games at game night that I could be playing at home, like I think there's a danger of building up, you know, potentially even some resentment with the people you have at home. Because if you're like, I'm playing this game here that I could have just stayed home and played with you guys. You know what I mean? Like I've
You don't think it's building resentment with the people that you're playing with? It's just
no, not at the game night, but at home. They're like, well, why didn't you just stay home and play? Like
it builds up resentment on their side.
Right, okay. right. Like, you know, for example, like my wife would understand, like if I'm playing 18xx, because she's like, yeah, I'm never touching that with a 10-foot pole. So, you know, like that doesn't bother her. But if I was to go and play like Carcassonne, Ticket to Ride, or games I could have just stayed at home and played with her, like there's some natural resentment that could build up there. It's like, I would have played that with you. Why did you leave me to go there? You know what I mean?
Yeah, but Sunday night's game night, dude. That's just how it works. So, you know, Sunday night's game night, and you went there because Sunday night is game night.
Right, absolutely. And I'm not saying that that's rational thinking. And I think, you know, at least on my wife's end, she doesn't interpret that as like a rational thing either. But yeah. I'm just saying, like, you know, for some individuals that could, you know, and even that, it's like you're invited, but we have kids, so somebody has to stay home, and but there's just all those different things that can happen in those situations, and different reasons as to why you may or may not want to play things. which is kind of think of where I was going with it. Like it's not so much as like I'm being a snooty snob about it, you know,
Yeah.
and that kind of thing. But I think that's kind of what and then so you were talking like we're thinking games inappropriate for a game night, games that would take like a ridiculous amount of time was kind of where you were going with the event games, right?
Well, but that's because that's what it is for me. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like that's the main limitation. Like, so, I mean, we're talking about like our own perspectives of limitations. And like,
Right.
I mean, part of it is like, you know, I'm always just kind of careful before I get settled into any game because
Right.
I don't want like I don't want the meta game of the game night to be failed by the group. You know, we're all playing this cooperative game, and that's just that like here we are all together trying to make it the best experience for the most people possible. And no, you can't please all the people all the time, but if somebody walks out of there and you could have done something, you know, like that's awful. You could have, you know, like you could have made that person's day and they needed it or just whatever, you know, like it could have been the one thing. So it's always kind of like I'm just kind of a little bit hesitant. And that's why I'm really getting to where for me, the Salin coefficient, my video series that's like on a bit of a hiatus, just, you know, while life is busy and everything. The idea is that, you know, there's like an efficiency to where how deep can I get in what little amount of time? And that's why I'm always looking for like this is a game that I feel like gets to the core of an interaction, you know, of a system of interaction. And it does so in a very, very short amount of time. And it's like just it's all like I start to just see the meat there, but it's so easy to sink my teeth into it and to know that it's digestible and that it's something that I can, you know, just it's so like and I'm finding that really like whatever it is, I'm just my soul animals right now are Mo Ideas and Tony Chen's Monsoon Publishing. Like these Taiwanese game companies have just been, in my opinion, honing in on this concept of like these games are going to be specifically designed to have all of the like all of the boxes checked for somebody who's like, you know, I want the game to be as quick and have everything that's just super, all my ducks get in a line and it gets over and it's clean and it's neat and it does something unique and, you know, it pushes the genre, but it pushes the genre an immense amount, maybe not as much as the largest and most grand games, but it's like in such a, you know, the package is what, you know, is what makes it so impressive is that, you know, this is a game that literally I've seen games of Liberatores, the new Liberatores get done in like 15, 20 minutes and a full game at longest is going to take an hour, if that. But like, I mean, you're talking about just it being a lot of different interesting things at once. And it's all getting me to an elevated headspace in remarkable, like in landmark time, I guess.
Right. Yeah, I can see that. And that kind of brings up an interesting idea of what games are appropriate at game night. That I was just thinking of too, related to that is it okay or is it appropriate to bring a game to game night that you know will take the whole game night? Like whatever group I sit down here to play with. And yeah,
you may as well, dude. I mean, if you got the excitement and there could be people there, yes. But at the same time, like because you know, like that is you. I think you're taking the D20, and unless that thing hits a 20, it ain't happening. That's the thing, is that it's like you have to come ready to accept if it doesn't happen, because it is a planets aligning sort of a thing where like if you get the group, then yes, do that, go with it. But like, you know, if you doubt a player's commitment, don't do it, because you know where that's ending, and that is much, you know, there you end up in a situation that's negative. And I'm not saying that would happen, but it's like, you know, that's I think getting people to commit to that longer experience is definitely worth it. But at the same time, go in with your expectations realistic. Maybe, I don't know, man. Maybe. Does that have any sense? Did anything I've said make any sense?
Well, yeah, a little bit, but I'm kind of coming at it from and I'm not saying that like what I think about this is right or wrong, but kind of what are the pitfalls or issues related with it. Because I think, yeah, like it can be an issue in the sense that if you're bringing a game like that to a public game night, that let's say, I think of a game that if you're going to play at a public game night is if you're getting to the 2.5, 3 hour mark, like most people would think of that as a really long game.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Like for me, it's practically a filler these days. But I think the vast majority of people would look at that and go, oh my God, that's a long game. And then the potential issue or pitfall there is if you pull that person in for that game, right? Like let's say I sell this game that's going to take 3 hours really well and they sit down and play it. If they have a bad experience, they had that bad experience for the whole game night.
Yeah, I get what you're saying.
Instead of like, and like you said, if they're playing, you know, let's say the difference between we'll try to keep apples and apples here. Let's say they're playing Indonesia or the Great Zimbabwe, right? So both splatter games, all splatter games have a similar logistic-y feel, right?
Yeah.
But if they sit down and play Indonesia for 2.5 hours and hate it,
yeah,
that's 2.5 hours of hate. Whereas if they played the Great Zimbabwe, maybe they hate that too because they just found out they really don't like splatter games, but they only had to dislike it for 40 minutes.
Yeah, or an hour, yeah. But it's the thing is, Andy, it's like you're talking about. I think maybe a term is heavy game survivor's guilt.
Yeah, something like that.
You're still a part of the hobby, and you know somebody else isn't. But it's like that sort of like you're sitting there and you like, did I make this happen? Should I really try this anymore? And I think, dude, people can choose for themselves whether or not an experience is worth it.
No.
You're upfront about it, and that's all you need to be.
No, that's what I'm doing.
Yeah.
I'm not really saying that I wouldn't do that. I'm just like, I don't know. I'm just throwing it out there as a nugget of thought.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like ultimately, I'm gonna do what I'm gonna do because, I don't know. Like if people are like, I hate you because all you bring, I'm like, whatever, dude. You know, it doesn't really bother me or get to me, or I'm trying to get to that. It's more just like things to think about. Maybe for, you know, if you're a listener or something, what games would be good to bring to a game night and what maybe should you look for a private experience in? Because I've had that issue when I've done 18xx, you know.
Like BIOS, you were just saying BIOS Genesis is like BIOS Genesis versus BIOS Megafauna might illustrate what you're talking about for this.
Yeah. So, yeah, because, well.
Your story of this, right? You said BIOS Genesis, you don't want to play a game night. BIOS Megafauna, you're fine with it.
Right.
Why?
And that's really, I guess that's don't bring a game that should be a solo game to a game night. That might be a little weird.
Oh, okay. Well, if that's just it's best suited as a solo game, then then that answers that question.
That's how I feel with it.
Why?
But,
I mean, you're talking, this is a multiplayer game. Like BIOS Genesis is not made for one player, or was it specifically engineered to be better as a solo game, or is it just you saying?
I don't know.
They both they're both in the same sort of system. It's just one's at a different scale. Like, what is it that makes one so much better suited? Or is it that you just had experiences with one and not the same experiences with another?
I think that the other issue is that, I mean, if you're talking the Sierra Madre line with the BIOS Genesis, BIOS Megafauna, I think BIOS Genesis is just way heavily more of a simulation than, like, I feel like BIOS Megafauna it's like 50-50 game simulation, right? Whereas BIOS Genesis might be like 80% simulation and 20% game.
So it's more just like the margins are different, and that margin being more of a simulation makes it less suitable for people that are going to want to play at a game night, because at the game night you're there to match wits and compete and to kind of to outdo each other, but in outdoing each other, really both of you win because you're both better for the process, for the struggle. But that doesn't happen so much when you've got a system that just continually keeps slapping you in the face and making
and to some extent, like in BIOS Genesis, the game's playing you.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
okay,
there's a little choice. But the other issue I have with playing it at a game night is the first choice you make is, if you're not the first player, you go wherever the first player want, and then you sit here for 15 minutes doing nothing while you wait for the energy to build up to the point you can actually do something again. It's just, I don't know. The only way I would think that game would be interesting to play in a group would be if you had people that understood the science behind it and you were having a discussion of how it simulates the science, because that would be the entertaining part rather than the way the mechanisms work on their own. Mm-hmm. So yeah, and that's the thing, and that's kind of where with Sierra Madre games to some extent is are those appropriate for a game night? Well, it depends if you have the right people on that end. But I would say there are game types that definitely have more stigmas than others. And kind of like the ones that do take the whole time, because there were definite times like where we had decided to do an 18xx at the game night, and there was some complaints around that because we weren't, it's like we didn't really service anyone new because you couldn't. We were all playing this game that was going to take 4 hours. So there's some stigma there, and I think there's stigma around.
How are you going to ever get new gamers to your 18xx group if you don't play them at game night?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
So I mean, like,
and that's my counter argument to it too. But I think there's also a stigma around 2-player games. Like if you, and that comes from self-belief, and I've heard that a lot from others. Like if you come to game night and you're just like, hey, we're going to play this 2-player game, and you separate the two of you off from everyone else, like it kind of feels a little awkward for some reason.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if you felt that way, but there was like,
oh yeah, I mean, if you're done, like it feels strange because it's just like, this is just you and me now. And I mean, unless like it just worked, I mean, if it worked out naturally that way, then it feels kind of like other games. But like for some reason, like once 2 people break away to like start playing a game, it just seems like one of those where you play it once and you look at it and you're like, we could just easily get this set back up again, and you don't really start interacting. It's just, I want to, like, those 2-player games are tough to get played, and I think that like having, like, we have had success with the 2-player game night. Like if we agree in advance, like this is going to be 2-player game night, then it's normal that everybody's doing this. And we just say like, hey, we just wanted to make this 2-player game night. It doesn't, everybody just kind of specifically brought their 2-player games. We did bring some other games just in case, but the main focus tonight is supposed to be 2-player games. We don't get a chance to play those at game night very much. So yeah, I mean, and that I would agree that like those are one of the biggest things, but then even that 2-player game night is never going to work for games that don't get, that are, let me play, not don't get good because that's negative. Games that are best enjoyed by 2 individuals that have both committed and spent time previously in the system, and a lot of times have spent private time with a system, like as in building a deck. That's one of those, it's just it's a total different thing that you need to almost like catch the bug for the game, and you also have to sort of participate in that separate community that develops, which may or may not even include like people that identify as gamers. Yeah.
And I think that like some related to that, and maybe getting where you are with that too, like I've had an issue with even thinking about bringing a coin game to a game night, because I feel like if you're going to have an actual good experience with a coin game, that almost has to be prearranged. And it's like you basically have to like give people homework. It's like, we're going to be playing this coin game on the weekend. You've got a week. Here's a how to play video. Here's a copy of the rules. Read up on your faction before you come. Even if you don't fully know how to work it, at least you're coming with some knowledge. But if you're like, if I had to even, forget Pendragon, because that's a beast. But let's say if I had to sit down and even teach Cuba Libre, one of the simpler ones, and I had people that had no knowledge of it at all, then I would have to sit there and go, okay, here's all the general rules of a coin game. And now let me explain everything about your faction and everything about your faction. And by the time you get around the table, like the 2 that were, in the last, are like they've checked out.
Yeah.
But
I think though that Andy, that it is important that you keep bringing those, that you keep being able to play those.
Absolutely.
I mean, seriously, like put those in the game box, because, and honestly, like maybe right now you've got root, maybe that's where people need to start. And maybe the best is just that we get people, that are committed to a system. And maybe it's best to just jump in head first. So maybe you want to bring both games just in case. You make the judge, because everybody that is going to react to every game in a different way. Some people are going to scoff and just like kind of brush off root because of its woodland theme, and they're not going to see the pieces, the inner workings that you see that lead you to feel fulfilled by that game, whereas most games that look like that would not fulfill you at all. But many people are put off by that. And so maybe for them, You know, like they would want you to play a coin game. You just never know exactly who you're going to interact with. And I would just say that like being flexible for game night is kind of the biggest thing. Like being flexible and understanding that like, I don't know, man. It's really tough to say that like, but you know, it's about good communication. You know what I mean? Like just if you want to try to play a game, you can try to play a game and you know, any game can work.
I don't underestimate people. I think it's kind of where you're going there, right?
Yeah, because that's the thing. Like, I have been consistently blown away by the abilities and the interest and the fact that if I maybe have evaluated in individuals having this level of ability, but it was really more that their interest level towards what the task that they were doing was at a level where that's where as much as they could commit to. Whereas, like, you see people that decide that they're going to do things and they do them. That's what I think, you know, like when it comes to just being a gamer and being a board gamer involves an element of teaching. Somebody is spreading it, you know, somebody is making it possible. It is really important to just, you know, understand that like getting people excited to game, you know, and just getting people to get started, you never know where they, you know, where they will really just, where it's going to take hold. And so like, the fact that it does give you such joy to play a game, like don't feel like you can't share that, but at the same time, don't think that if you don't share that, you won't be fulfilled.
Right. Well, and that's fair too, because you don't want it to be a miserable experience. Because that doesn't, I mean, that ultimately won't serve anyone. It's like if I'm playing a game that the headspace handles self-care, but I have 3 people like glaring at me with like death glares because I'm making them play this game. That's not going to help your mental health state either. But yeah, and I think that's fine. And I don't know. So I guess it gets interesting because I know some people kind of pigeonhole themselves into one type of game or another. And I think to some extent I give the impression I do that when I think I do it less than people might think.
Because this is more of your social time and this is your self-care time. Like podcast is also kind of self-care time because we get to spend some time chatting about things that we care about. And it's, you know, it's like that sort of thing that you do inside your own bubble. You know, that just, yeah. So I get where you're coming at it from, man. It makes sense to me. And
so what games would be like inappropriate? Because I think this is worth addressing too. But games that would be inappropriate to bring because I don't know how far I want to dive down this comfort level, shall we say, with those around you. Like, you know, the aforementioned people we had at our game night, they've played a couple games where people are just like, man, I'm not feeling good about what you're doing over there.
Understand that the people that are coming to game night are looking for innovative things.
Right.
And that many times by people that are attracted to the hobby, it is not by something that is like, you know, going to get your brain. It's not going to engage your brain. It's more like the sort of, I don't know, like base humor, essentially, where, you know, like any game where the jokes are written for you at a game night is going to immediately just like gamers, maybe the jokes are relevant and humorous, but like any gamer sees right through like the, you know, the facade of this and is looking for a more of a way to perform, you know, like so like games that become inappropriate by giving players like, you know, like it's funny if it starts appropriate and somewhere goes haywire and becomes inappropriate. You know, like a game like Telestrations that eventually turns into somebody drawing a condom, you know, and that's not the word. That's not a word in the regular Telestrations is way funnier than if you pull out the Cards Against Humanity things and you realize that like you're trying to like depict these disgusting things and do it in like a clear and concise way. And it's a different challenge. But like, you know, it's not really funny to see it like that. It's just kind of more like it's a different level of enjoyment. It's almost like sort of like curling up to the, you know, spooning the beast versus like when it happens, it's kind of like, oh, cute. It's like a fart. Oops. It slipped out. You know, this accidentally became inappropriate. That's okay. Telestrations becoming inappropriate is fine. But if a game starts in the inappropriate like area, play that at home. Like seriously, like that's when those games are for. Like if there's a card that you would feel like at all nervous reading to an audience full of people that are in the affected group about this card, like say something that's like, right now, we just talked about Brett Kavanaugh earlier. If there's a card in a game that says something about the hashtag Me Too movement, probably don't play that at a public game night, just because
probably not a wise idea.
No, like getting humor from that, it might help you to like sort of de-stress from it. But like honestly, hearing that from across the room is different than participating in it at the table. And so when you're at a public game night, those are just straight up like, that's not the way to go with it. Now, like I said, if something becomes inappropriate, like that's different. If it becomes like, ooh, oh, I thought I saw that, man. Come on, like that, your drawing looked like that. That's your fault. Like it's our fault. I didn't see that until you drew that. So, but yeah, anytime that here's a weird area for that though. Like when there's a game that specifically delves into the political system and its thesis is that our system is corrupt and it sort of uses like jokes, but definitely more mechanisms. And I'm specifically referring to a game in my head, and I'll just say the name of the game, but it's Corporate America. And there's been a couple of different versions. I've actually played, I played a playtest version of the new expansion with the designer of it when I was on my trip out to San Jose to their proto spiel there that I accidentally attended. And it was a very interesting, it's thinking about, the thesis of the gameplay here is a certain thing. And you could make an argument that Phil Eklund games have a thesis in a certain direction as well. It's just that there's not cartoony looking artwork and a silly overall atmosphere to make you think that this is kind of more of a satire than a simulation, right? So where do we get with satire, and is that still appropriate? I don't know.
Yeah.
Well, here's the question: is game night really an appropriate time to defend British colonialism?
Yeah.
Good. Thanks, Trent. Thanks.
That's where you go.
Okay. And actually, we have Trent defending British colonialism right now.
No.
That's where you go, we're going to play this game. Do not look at the last page of the rule book.
Just ignore it.
Ignore that last page. Or another thing to think about too, related to that is any game, I think, if there's a game that you would be uncomfortable showing to members of your family, that may not be a game for a public night period. So, one, I could throw an example out there, and from everything I've heard, this is actually mechanically and thematically appropriate, a very good game. Thinking about Conan, the minis game that came out, right? Some of the artwork and the way those work, I would just be like, you throw that in front of the wrong person, that could go really bad really quick.
Okay, I got to go down this road. Okay, we're having 2-player game night, okay, in a week or two.
Yeah.
Would you feel okay playing This Guilty Land?
Yeah, that's kind of one of them I'm thinking about too. Is that a game you really want to bring?
This Guilty Land, for the uninformed, is it's a game where one player plays as slavery, essentially, and then
you're playing as forces.
Each side represents basically an abstract idea. One side is justice, and the other side is oppression.
Right.
Slavery, basically. I mean, that's
Yeah, but it's more the mechanisms that lead to the slavery. It's not about the slavery itself, is my understanding. Or what are the societal structures that allow this thing to take place is kind of where it was.
I think that's okay to play at game night because that's what it's for. Now, if you're sitting there laughing your tail off and screaming out things about how, look at what I'm doing to make people's lives miserable, I think that it's probably intended to be a more somber experience. If you've ever played the game This War of Mine, I don't think anybody would hesitate to say, there's cards, there's specific passages that you take out. You take out certain, there are different colors on every card, and you don't ever read the blue color or something, whatever one it was, black color, if you want to avoid essentially inappropriate violence, gore, sex, bad language. But if you ever do take, actually read those, at least what I found is that they were not tasteless. It was that they were using these are elements of human life that are part of this type of a conflict. It's
right.
It approaches them.
It was a trigger warning in a very serious and legitimate way.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of the way I looked at it.
Yes, and that's good that you can have people take that out because people can still then enjoy the game maybe for other reasons, especially if they specifically lived through something like that and don't want to relive it.
Yeah, you don't really want to. Well, or to think about that, I mean, related to that too, if you had people playing Freedom, the Underground Railroad, and they were laughing hysterically while playing it, you would be like, I'm questioning you as a human being now. Really?
Yeah, I mean, if you're playing it from the right perspective, this Guilty Land is absolutely like it is. It's
Mhm.
you know, let's put it like this. I don't know the exact way the game works, but like if you're playing it from this perspective of like, this is us seeing, like, yes, there's gameplay here, but like we can both learn about how this is. And the reason that we study, like this is that back to, you're not glorifying, as long as it doesn't step into glorifying the institutions that led to the oppression, as long as it does maintain a mood that is appropriate to, the fact that this is a sensitive issue where many people literally lost their freedom for generations. I mean, there's just so much to it that needs to be respected. And I think that it can be done. It's a dangerous place to go, but it's a very bold place to go, and it can have some extremely positive effects on people playing it when you become aware, when you become like, there's like I think an enlightenment that can be derived. And I'm not saying that this is going to be the vehicle for it, but it's a possibility. And for that reason, anything like this, as long as its mood is appropriate, the content itself, like it's a tough thing. It's tough.
So maybe
it's tough.
Maybe in that situation, they would be appropriate for game night, but you probably want to really be upfront with the person you may be playing
Don't
with.
dump it on somebody. And also maybe make sure that the people playing around you are aware that like this game is, this could be a heavy, it could be an emotionally, you might hear some phrases that sound strange as we discuss these elements here, because, this is a game like no other that is going into a dark place in the human mind. It's and it's
go ahead.
Put
it this way. There are things you might say playing this Guilty Land that would sound exactly as same as a thing you might say when you're playing Cards Against Humanity. The difference is the relative level of seriousness.
Because they are serious. Exactly. That's the thing. You're not sitting there. It's not that you're deriving enjoyment. It's that you are paying homage to a level that's like, it's the same way a lot of people collect like Jim Crow materials, and they do it they do it because they're trying to document this time. Like so many people are moving on from this and not seeing the racism that is ever present in our culture, and the just the inability of the majority to see the minority and their struggles, and the fact that you can't just go back to something that you never had in the first place.
Right. So maybe this, because I think I take objection, I think, with the idea of you can't enjoy it. I think you can enjoy it, but what you're enjoying is not necessarily the gameplay as much. You're enjoying that you're expanding your horizon and your ways to picture a situation and what you're learning from it.
It's like, yeah, go ahead. I'm so sorry, Andy. I didn't mean to interrupt. Go.
Well, it's kind of like, the difference between, for me, let's put this, because I think war games fall into this category a lot, right? It's the difference between watching a documentary on some parts of the World War II that say may have been dark versus watching a movie done in poor taste about them, where the point of the movie was just to be an action movie with lots of explosions, but they didn't treat the aspects of history.
You there because you and I are in the same place, Andy, and I just want to say exactly where you've put me is you're talking about Django Unchained, in my opinion. Django Unchained was very much highly praised, and I took issue with it because I didn't like that it was like stylizing so many aspects of the just the negative aspects of the racist and stuff. It just made like I said that in a weird way, but it made me feel like seeing this stylized, it just made me very uncomfortable. It was like, to me, it glorified in many ways, like this sort of a system, and it made it so uncomfortable and so strange. And so just because it would have these like zinger lines, and things that there was like, it felt like a Tarantino movie. And the contrast to that I would say that is my example of, it's not that I can't deal with the theme, it's that I didn't like the way it was treated, is that I loved and adored and respect the movie 12 Years a Slave. But it was one of the absolute most difficult cinematic experiences I've ever had. It was like an hour, whatever it was, 2 hours of just watching absolute human suffering on another level, like just another plane. And I feel like, that's kind of that's not as bad. It's not like, I don't know. It's a tough place, but like that's where you were going, I think, Andy, with like, seeing an action movie that just deals with it and just brushes it to the side, or just, uses it, but like stylizes it, versus like this is going to take it on head on and just deal with the suffering. You understand that this, this system from the perspective of the oppressors, which then makes you in a perspective that is more like, just this type of thing. This is how it happened, and this is how we never let it happen again.
Well, yeah, and kind of, and even let's say, as Trent and I play Conflict of Heroes Guadalcanal, right? Yes, there's enjoyment in the system of the game of, doing these tactical battles, but there's also an enjoyment in a sense in that, for me in particular, playing the Japanese army, the things the game tries to make you do gives you an insight into the cultural aspects of the society of the time.
Exactly.
And that's a different level of, that's an enjoyment, but it's a different kind of enjoyment. And I think
that's better phrased than what I said. You're right. I meant to say that.
Right. And I think that's where people don't always understand, is that it's not that I'm enjoying the horror of it. It's I'm enjoying that my mind is being expanded, allowing me to see perspectives I didn't see before.
Yes.
But I think if you're going to do that at a game night, you want to be really
don't do that with somebody who's like, so I've played Betrayal.
This is about the Japanese army on Guadalcanal. It's kind of like Betrayal and House on the Hill.
Oh, jeez. Yeah, Andy, run that by me before you ever try anything. You're gonna lose your rights here in a second. You're gonna lose the privilege of that. You're gonna be like, oh man, no, you'll be just fine. This is 2 to 6 hours.
Good.
Because of the Monopoly. Okay. If the Monopoly is revoked,
it's kind of like Monopoly. We'll try it. It'll be fun.
There's a Monopoly that can be revoked. So anyway, I appreciate the topic, Andy, and I think that the discussion is very relevant, because you don't want to feel like you're guilty of making people's game nights ruined, because you know what it feels like to have that happen to you. And the most thing is the fact that you're conscious of it and asking yourself the question, is that the answer is already right there in the midst of you're conscious of it. So whatever you're going to do as a conscious individual, and to keep your open mind and keep taking in information as people play, and as you ask and see what experiences they've had and what they are looking for, that will just help you to make, essentially to make both your dreams come true. And that might be making sure that you don't play with them and that they don't play with you, which is, something that you might sense first, at least specifically in that game. But it also might be that like, this is the right game. And in that case, there's just, it can have some real, like, you can get places with it. There's a reason that we've been doing this for 186 episodes.
Right. Or you can just do what the Germans did and play nothing but games about farming.
It's a nice little turd to leave floating at the top. So, Trent, do you want to say anything into that, or?
No, I think this is a good time to stop.
All right, hype time. And that hype is going to start out with the game that I'm just going to take it to start with, so that I don't have to think. And that is, so this game, I am so torn over what I even want to do when I see this game available. And this is because there's a game that's on Kickstarter right now called Mezo, M-A-Z-O, as in like Mesoamerica, Mezo, and it deals with the Mayans specifically. And you see a development of Mayan iconography and God and mythology in a physical form and an artistic form that we see mainly happening with other cultures that are more like, present and part of mainstream culture, like Romans and Greeks and even Egyptians, though that's less common, and Norse. I would say probably Romans and Greek would be the most common mythology. Then you see Norse, then you see maybe you start seeing some of the like Rising Sun, some of the Japanese, and then maybe after that down the line, people study the ancient Egyptians. There's a lot of like mainstream things, but the Mayan actual gods are ones that like I'm familiar with because of, like historical things I've seen, but I've never seen anybody really just play with the actual mythology and put that into board game form in a sort of stylized and that sort of like, hey, look at all these cool things that they dreamed up way. And that's why Mezo from that level is interesting, because there's miniatures in it that are beautiful. Absolutely beautiful. Remind me of like maybe a larger scale version of the miniatures there in Kemet. But here's the other reason that I'm interested in this. Like the designer and publisher, whoever is putting together this Kickstarter for Mezo, is confident enough in the gameplay here that there is actually a Kickstarter-only edition of the game. And it's kind of like Gloomhaven did, where you could get like standees and not the miniatures. So you can get standee, I think it has standees for the gods, but then there's a lot of wooden components, I believe. Like they're like use just generic cylinders as opposed to the, like shaped plastic miniatures from the game, which these are just warriors anyway, but they'd all be the same sculpt. So instead of that, they just do like wooden pieces. And to me, like the fact that there's no plastic in this game and it's like, I can get it without the plastic makes me want to go for that, because I'm like, like I'm fine with the standee. Honestly, I like the standee better than I like a non-painted, non-finished miniature in my game. If you're going to give me a miniature and you at least finish it, I'll love that. But if you're going to give me a miniature that's unpainted, it's always going to look like there's an element of unfinishedness to this game. And I just never have enough time to paint everything. So like that's what I'm like torn to different directions, because I'm like interested in it for its content. I've never seen Mayan themes done this way. I am a Spanish teacher. For those of you that don't know, I am a Spanish teacher, and this is exactly in my interest area. I'm also a fan of mythology. Like got started with literature by reading Greek mythology for a class I had in high school, and that really just kind of things took off. In my interest in entertainment and print materials took off from there. And really like, so this is marrying together this love of mythology. So I mean, like I should back this game, definitely. But the beautiful miniatures are like, it's like, this is one of those things where it's like, I actually don't have any Mayan miniatures. I could like put these up in my room, but then it's like, I want to get the standee so that I can still play the game. And I want to get the standee version just because I want to take this ideological stance towards, I don't need miniatures. I'm a Eurogamer. Miniatures are irrelevant. And I especially don't want you to spend your time making the miniatures and not playtesting the game and developing it to make it good. So, but there's a lot of different things swirling in my head right now about this game. And hopefully that at least gives you an idea of whether or not you should take a look at it before it ends and funds. And that is Mezo, which is definitely funding.
Oh. Do they have an option for people who want paper maps?
Yeah, I think that's called the print and play, Andy. You can get the print and play, as most games do. All right.
I had to go there. All right, done.
Okay, so now up to, let's go down the list for a book from a popular game that Andy got rid of. So it's not Andy's type, it's you, Trent. Let's first shame Andy for getting rid of this game.
I'm not going to shame him. That's a personal choice, and I can understand why he got rid of it. I want to talk about the Tramways Engineer Workbook. What, Andy? He said, "Oh."
Oh, I didn't know what game he was going with immediately. I was like,
I was wondering if that was him filling with regret.
Oh no, I do kind of regret getting rid of that game, but it just was never going to get played. So yeah.
Sure.
Anyway,
okay. So I got this in the mail a couple days ago, and I've actually been looking at it. And essentially, what this is it's a book of like, there's a lot. I don't want to give an exact number, but I think it's around 70 scenarios in essence for Tramways. But they're solo or, depending on how you do it, or two-player scenarios for Tramways. But you don't actually need Tramways to play them. What there is are kind of like puzzles. They're kind of like board states, and you're kind of trying to figure out how to optimize and get the best solution out of them. What's interesting about this is it doesn't require you really to know how to play Tramways to do it, because maybe the first 10 to 15 essentially teach you how to play Tramways. Mm-hmm. Starting off from very, very simple. Like I did the first couple and was like, it was really simple, basic stuff that if you play Tramways, you get it. Mm-hmm. But by about 15 or 20, I think you'd understand how to play Tramways. I haven't gotten that far. I'm going through them one at a time. But after that, some of them are just like, I look at it and I'm like, that looks like a disastrous board state that I would not want to be in, but somehow I'm supposed to figure out how to make lemons out of lemonade. And I get the feeling that if you went through and actually figured out all of these scenarios on your own and like went all the way through it, you'd be killer at Tramways. You'd be curb stomping people left and right by playing it in your local group. I'm looking forward to just going through it as a puzzle book more than anything. So I think it's good for that. It does offer the capacity to do them as a 2-player, which I haven't really looked at that closely or done yet. But
I think it's like when you do that, it's like who could be the most efficient in gathering points.
I think that's kind of what it is, like who's more efficient. But I'm looking for it mostly as a solo puzzle book because I enjoy Tramways, but as Andy mentioned, it's kind of difficult to get it to the table. I don't really want. It's one of those games that I'm a little hesitant to teach, and so I kind of want to play with people that are already experienced. So there's the catch-22. This is kind of letting me scratch that itch, and it's pretty neat. What's neat is so basically what you get if you pick it up. I don't know if it's being sold after the Kickstarter or not.
I think I saw he's going to have copies at Essen. I believe
it's a spiral-bound book. And then it has a little, very, very brief getting started like rule sheet. And then 2 transparent markers and a transparency sheet. You don't need the transparency sheet. You can write right on the pages of the book. But there is always a chance if you're using, dry erase markers that a little bit could be left behind. So you just use I've just been using the transparency sheet. I can't wait to dig deeper into this. It's going to be a good thing that I turn to when I want like a 15 or 30-minute puzzle to solve through to think about something different. And it's really well done. I will say that.
Yeah. If I remember right, I saw him actually throw out on Twitter. He's going to do something very similar to that, except with the small city system.
He's going to do a small city book. That'll be interesting.
Yeah, I think I saw him talking about that he was starting to work out small city puzzles for a small city book.
But I will say that if you go all the way through this book and did them all, I'm pretty sure if you go back and play Tramways, you'll be kicking people in the teeth at
it. Yeah.
Cool. Well, that was the new expansion to Tramways, right?
I think they call it Tramways the Engineer's Handbook or something like that. Yeah, it's more of like it's a standalone thing using the Tramways systems. It's basically Tramways the puzzle book.
Yep, that's exactly what it is. It's a Tramways puzzle book.
Yeah, it sounds interesting. I mean, it makes me kind of sad that I don't have Tramways in my possession because, I'm in the same boat as Trent. Like exactly what you said rings true with me, that it's kind of difficult to teach. I mean, just because, there is like those moments when like just there's a void card out there and it's just going to be awful. And it's going to make everybody, it's going to make your game just harder. And there's a lot of stuff you have to manage. And I feel like I would just rather teach Age of Steam and get a very similar, but it's not that simple. It's like Age of Steam and Few Acres of Snow. And it very much is in between those two, but for whatever reason, I feel much more comfortable with Age of Steam. I don't know why. I feel like Few Acres of Snow.
Age of Steam's a simpler game to teach, period.
Yeah, well, and Few Acres of Snow is you and one other person, so it's you're kind of it's a different headspace. When you're trying to manage a multiplayer game that has that same difficult card decisions, it's almost like a very stressful teach because so many people have so much information to see here. So yeah.
Well, the other issue, which kind of actually relates back to our topic, is it's really about a system rather than it is about an individual play or game. And kind of where it went for me is it's I feel like you can kind of only have so many systems-based board games and what you have time to deal with. So it was just I've got 18XX, I've got Age of Steam, and I have Tramways. And I just felt that 3 was too much. And so I'm got to get rid of one. Sure as heck not getting rid of Age of Steam or 18XX. So it just kind of came to that. But yeah, no, this was really cool. Yeah, this is something that if you've never played Tramways, you can play if you just like puzzles.
Sure.
Optimization puzzles.
Very cool. Yeah. Well, I look forward. I can try that too. I get what you're saying. So, Andy, I'm really excited for the game that you're about to hype, man. Like, I'm serious. Like, I have played this one, and I look forward to. Yeah. Anyway, I'm stealing your thunder, dude. You go.
Yeah, so I'm hyping the Estates. My original title for the hype was "I Can't Wait to Get This," but I've got it now. So it just came today. So yeah, this is a reimagining, or reprinting, slight reimagining of Neue Heime, which has the reputation of being one of the most ruthless cutthroat auction games to have ever been invented. It looks really nice and sweet on the table, and it is so not. Like,
I don't want to I don't want to say that it's not, and direct people to this game that would not enjoy it, but I find it to feel very much like everything about this game feels as clean as a Reiner Knizia game, and if it wasn't so like I see you going for something, and I immediately need to think about how I can do something that will take points from you and give points to me. You know, like everything that you're doing is sort of like reacting to making sure that whatever players have puts them in a rough spot. So, I mean, it is tough like that, but all the bits of this game, like there's nothing here that's like actually like, oh, you serious? It's all, it all feels fair. It all feels like, you should have sort of seen that coming. Like I said, like a Knizia game.
Yeah, but it can be nasty. But I think because I've heard about this and I've seen some comments where people can play this game and not like it. And it's not even so much that they didn't like that it could be rough or anything, but they just didn't understand it because it's for an auction game, it's very opaque. It's not always obvious what your best move is. And there's a depth of gameplay to this auction game that doesn't necessarily exist in more simple auction games. And if you don't kind of dig into it and find that hidden depth, that can be a problem where people cannot like it. And I'm hoping, as people get their copies, they give it a few tries to start trying to find that depth. Because when you pick out of the road, there can be a whole lot of decisions like, do I pick this cube because I need it, or do I pick this cube because I know you're going to have to pay through the nose for it, or I get it. So there's things like that. I mean, there's a legitimate strategy to Neue Heime, the Estates, of I'm going to try to win with a score of 0 because I'm going to drive everybody else negative. And there's options to do that you can, because certain things will score and others won't, and you can
make sure that scoring happens when nobody can score points, including you, but they're losing. Okay, yeah.
So it can be very brutal the thing is, it's all about how the people choose to play with the game in front of them. Like, you could just be nice with it, you could be mean with it, you could be a little of both. The nice thing about it is, with the Estates, the capstone production is this game looks freaking sweet on the table. Like everything is screen printed for colorblind friendliness, because that was kind of one of the issues with the first game, was that there was too many colors and colorblind people kind of had a difficulty parsing it out. Now they have these screen printed sides. Each one has its own unique pattern, or each color does. Instead of just being like a little block of wood with a couple nicks in it, now you have like meeples, like shaped like those roadblocks they use at like the center of highways to separate lanes when they're doing construction. So you have that. So it's an absolutely beautiful edition of the game. And I'm really looking forward to playing it. And I know he included a couple of the variants that have become kind of common practice now in the official rulebook. So for example, one of the biggest complaints people had is you get these little rooftop tiles that, like, that's how you cap off a building and get it scored down.
Those are a big part of the game.
Right. In the original game, there was apparently blank rooftops, and if you draw one, it was just lose a turn.
Yeah.
And even like some of the original people that worked on it are just like, yeah, that's an old mechanic. It needs to go. So they got rid of that. And now it's an official variant that people used to do. But what I've heard is the way to really play this game and make it interesting is you play 3 rounds. Don't play 1 round, play 3 rounds, and you don't reset the cash at the end of the round.
Mm-hmm.
So you could like build up, spend 1 round auctioning things that people want and you don't want, trying to build up a cash flow so you could really kill it in the next round.
Yeah, because you actually do get paid. Yeah, so I guess that would maybe answer the people that say the game doesn't go long enough for the investor strategy to really take hold, but that gives an investor strategy like a viability.
Yeah. And I know some people wondering about this because in the original game it had like paper money. They called them checks, right? Each check was like $1 million or whatever. These are nice. Like basically he went with I think it's the same quality as the money that was in Tesla versus Edison for their money, which is like, if anyone complains about the paper money in this game, they are out of their mind. Like this is paper money I will play with.
Yeah. It's like cardstock, kind of.
It's a very thick cardstock. Like it doesn't feel chintzy or cheap at all. Like this will last plenty of time. I mean, you could sleeve it, I guess, if you're really that worried about it, but I don't see a reason to ever do it myself. Like it's good stuff, which is like normal for Clay because he's a component snob, and I say that in the best way possible. But
yeah,
and speaking of,
you still want him to add the paper map.
Yeah, well, that's just me. I about made my own print and play of it like a year ago anyway. Oh, and I just saw that Capstone, he's now like partnering with what is it, like Top Shelf Gamer or something, like the upgrade your game website.
Got like the upgraded components, one of those places.
Yeah. So I said, I'm like, okay, now that's like a perfect match for Clay business wise. But anyway, I'm looking forward to it because I've heard from a lot of people that really like auction games is that if this one's not their favorite, it's really high in their estimation.
It's a classic. I would put it alongside, the greats from Knizia. It's not. It feels like something definitely unique. There's definitely aspects to it that feel like that it incorporates more of an economic style to it than necessarily Knizia's. Like the things he did to make auctions were to make everything about everything matter. And I think that this one has where everything matters, but that all these different little pieces to the puzzle are so player dependent, that like that's where it all starts, is like it starts becoming all these 4 players at once moving pieces on a chessboard is what it feels like. But it's really like every dollar is like an extra shove and an extra extension, but is it an overextension? Did you get too much? Did you get yourself set up in this row to now have somebody else come swoop in and make sure that entire row is never going to score? And that's where all your points are. So,
and there's a lot of like, because of the way the rows work, of like, there's a lot of room for very temporary alliances because you can both benefit, but they're like very temporary alliances. It's like, we're allied right now on this move, and then I'm going to screw you later. So there's just a lot of depth to this game for an auction game, and that depth is very opaque depth. It's not necessarily obvious what the best thing for you to do is.
I very much want to play this on Sunday, by the way.
Yeah. Have you gotten yours yet, Trent? Did you?
No, it's still coming.
Yeah, it should be there not too long, I would imagine. I'll bring it on Sunday if nothing else. So.
Yeah, you should. I think this is a good place to get people into things. And just, the biggest thing though is be careful how much you enjoy the first time somebody does a interactive, like move, like if you're like, wah, ha, 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 and then that player that got that against them is like, like that's...
Yeah, you can be very sad at that. And that's where you just like, I mean, you just got to be careful. You just look at it and be like, look, it's a game with cute little colored blocks. What could be bad about that? There's nothing. It looks like a kid's game, man. It'll be fine. Come on over.
I don't think it looks like a kid's game. It's got nice looking pieces, but it definitely has like an art style that to me makes it look like something now in the Estates, whereas with Neue Heimat,
Neue Heimat did almost look like a kid's game.
It looks like a kid's game, yeah. The Estates looks like, I mean, the board of Neue Heimat always did look like a standard, like plot of land that looked like it could have popped up in any Euro game about an area that you're developing, but the rest of the pieces all made it look like what you're saying, a kid's game.
Right. So anyway,
the lose a turn mechanic made it feel like a kid's game.
Anyway, so that's the Estates. I'm pretty sure he's going to have some more copies to sell at Essen and stuff. But I've got mine through Kickstarter. I don't think there's going to be much difference between the Kickstarter and the retail version. But I'm looking real forward to playing it. I think this is going to be a pretty crazy good time for those that like cutthroat auctions.
Mm-hmm. Well, sounds good. Boy, wow.
Yeah,
apparently all the energy is gone from my voice.
Andy has a game he's excited about.
Oh, goodness, man. Whoa. That came out so wrong. All right. Anyway, I'm super pumped about this game. I've already said it once. I mean, you already heard my enthusiasm.
I'm super pumped about this
right
game.
now it's just saying that it's time for us to say goodbye on this week's episode of The Good, the Bored, and the Ugly. So I wish you all a great week of gaming, and we will catch you next week on The Good, the Bored, and the Ugly. Take care, everybody.